Happy Monday and welcome back to another Saxton podcast. Uh, Early in the week this week as you are headed overseas. Welcome in, Deuce.
How are you, buddy?
I'm hanging in there for a Monday. You're doing a lot better than I am.
Yeah, well, little last day of work before I take off. Be back in 10 days or so back to the USA, but we'll enjoy some of Europe in the meantime.
Well, we'll get right into it. You gave us a top 10 selection with Kuchar at Harbor Town. Your thoughts on the winner, Brandon Grace, and what else transpired?
Yeah, a little disappointed in Kuchar. He just couldn't seem to get the ball in the hole on the weekend. Conditions were tough with the wind, but just didn't make enough putts for that top five or a win. But we'll take the T9. Brendan Grace had a T7 here last year in his debut, and I think it was just a matter of time before he won over here. He's a highly ranked world class player, but he doesn't play over here a ton. And you wouldn't think this was a good course fit. He's a little bit wild off the tee, but from what I saw, it looked like he dialed it down, hit a lot of 3-woods. And I think the wind really helped him. He has a really low ball flight, and he loves playing in bad conditions. And he just had a great final round Sunday, holding off Luke Donald and Russell Knox, who, Luke Donald's, I think this is his second place finish here. So he clearly likes the course, but he can't seem to punch that winner's ticket yet.
DeChambeau last week talked about getting a check this week, and he certainly did with a top 5 finish.
Yeah, it's a nice way to start your career, cashing a $256,000 paycheck, I guess. His 3 starts this year on the PGA Tour, he's made all 3 cuts. T21 at the Masters, T27 at Bay Hill, and then this really solid finish. This kid looks like the real deal to me.
Anything else from Harbor Town?
I don't think so. Always a good event, always strong. Players seem to love the course, so I think it's in a good spot. The healthy tournament after the Masters.
What do we have this week to look forward to?
They are heading to Texas now for the Valero Texas Open, TPC San Antonio. If you remember way back a couple years ago, the famous Kevin Na, 18 on the hole. Very difficult course, usually windy. Winning score is almost always in the single digits, so you will no doubt see a ball striker style leaderboard. Got to keep it in play. There's a lot of danger. You'll see a lot of big numbers here. So I think you'll see someone like Billy Horschel, Charlie Hoffman, Daniel Summerhays, somebody like that be up on the leaderboard.
You expecting a pretty good field this week?
It's an okay field. I wouldn't call it good. You get a couple of the top names, but this is a good time for the big names to take a break after the Masters. Last week, a bunch of them had to play Hilton Head because of the RBC sponsorship. But you won't see a ton of big names this week, no.
With the jam-packed schedule this year, with the majors, the Olympics, the Ryder Cup, do you expect to see some of these smaller tournaments, the big guys not playing to try and rest up for the bigger events with the packed schedule?
Yep, you're 100% right there. I think these Olympic years are going to really hurt these smaller tournaments. 2 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks, is the Wells Fargo. So that's a really good golf course that usually draws some of the bigger names. So I think, the Valero, and next week New Orleans with the Zurich. It's just, it makes too much sense for the big names to take a break right now. So I think you're exactly right. This pinch schedule is going to really hurt some of these middle tournaments.
Well, it's a good time for you to be going overseas then with the golf schedule.
Perfect time. I'd give you a couple names for Valero, since we're not going to have a pod next week for golf. Justin Rose is your defending champ at New Orleans. You might see a couple big names in that one, so you'll probably see a good player win that as well.
Anything else from the golf world?
No, we have a couple down weeks, and then we kind of ramp back up again with Wells Fargo and the Players. in a couple of weeks.
One other housekeeping thing before we get into the purpose of this early podcast. All of the series have played one game in the NBA playoffs. Early takeaways?
Pretty much what we talked about, I think, for the most part. The Hornets getting absolutely blown out, I think, was a little bit of a surprise to both of us. And then looking back on it, I think Indiana is a little better than we thought, and I think Toronto, they could have some issues going forward. Just, they don't have the best player on the floor, and Lowry and DeRozan, it might be mental now. They have a strong history of struggling in the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, I think you hit right on. Detroit basketball hung around for 45 minutes. I like Van Gundy coming out and complaining about the calls that LeBron gets. I don't know if that's going to turn anything, but I think Van Gundy will make some adjustments. This is going to be a tough series for Cleveland, I think. They're going to win
agree.
it.
I totally forgot about that. Good point.
They
did hang around. For Cleveland, I love how they kind of turned to LeBron and made him the point guard.
Yes.
If you watch the game back, all of a sudden Irving and Love are really good players when they're being distributed the ball from LeBron. So I think that's what Cleveland needs to stick to. It's hard for Detroit to stop.
Yeah, I think the big problem is in crunch time, who does Detroit go to? And I think that came up yesterday.
Yeah, Reggie Jackson was pretty bad in the fourth quarter the other night with boy Reggie, so they need him to probably be that guy.
I do think Cleveland wins this probably 5, maybe 6, but I do think they're going to expend a lot more energy than they thought in round 1.
Yep, totally agree.
You touched on the Pacers. That'll be a series worth watching going forward, and I think Atlanta-Boston will be a very good series.
That was a great game 1. Boston kind of let that one slip away there at the end, although Avery Bradley injury, if he's out for the rest of the playoffs, I think that kind of sinks their ship.
The West went exactly as we thought with chalk. Any of those teams, any of those teams in any trouble whatsoever moving forward?
No, I not at all. I saw that Curry is questionable with the ankle sprain. Maybe a little concern there just because it's the ankle and he's had some major problems with that in the past. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him maybe even get a game or 2 off.
Agree. Anything else you want to touch on in the NBA?
Nope, but just uniform as we thought so far.
To the main event, the reason for the podcast. NFL draft a week and a half away. How excited are you?
The excitement is building for sure, especially after we had the big blockbuster trade. We had the Warriors going for the record in Kobe's last game, and the NFL pops up with a trade the next day, and no one seems to care about basketball anymore. That's the power of the NFL, and we're not even playing games. We're still 6 months away from playing games. Your
takeaway and thoughts on that trade?
I think my first thought was it was good for both teams, especially because I think the Rams are going to get some comp picks from the Janoris Jenkins signing with New York. So they'll probably get a third-rounder back because of that, which makes it a little easier to take. I like the trade a lot for Tennessee. I think they got a ton of picks. They can rebuild that roster. I think they have a good foundation with Mariota, DeMarco, a couple good players on the defensive side. I think it's a great trade for them.
They now sit at 15 in the draft. It seems like they're really targeting an offensive lineman. If Stanley, Tunsil, and Conklin are off the board, would you look into trading down further?
Yeah, I think they'll probably be able to get Conklin there, which I think is a good fit.
Right.
But all 3 of those guys happen to be gone. I think they can move down 5 or 6 more picks, maybe to 20, 21, and get that kid Cody Whitehair from Kansas State. It's kind of a guard-tackle combo. They'll probably start him off in guard in the league. they could probably move down to 25-ish and get him. So I totally agree with you. I think that's the way to go if that's the scenario that plays out.
The big talk in this draft leading up to it has been Wentz and Goff. Give me your thoughts and positions on both of them.
Carson Wentz, physically the more imposing guy. Physically can do a lot more things. But he played at a school that I never watched play. So I can't tell you a lot about watching him. I think the one D1 opponent he played against was Iowa State, and it was just one of those games where he looked like a game manager, and Iowa State stinks. So my position on Wentz is, maybe he's got a higher ceiling, but those guys always scare me, the ones that you know nothing about. Maybe he is Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, Steve McNair from the smaller school, but number one pick in the draft, that's scary to me. I don't know what you think about that, but I'm not a huge fan of taking the total unknown at number one.
It seems that the Rams, being in LA now, would be an ideal fit for Goff to go from Cal to the LA Rams. I think Goff is the safer pick. I do like Wentz's arm, but I'm in the same boat with the questions that arise that you brought up. I think he's boom or bust. And
I like Goff a lot. The more I saw him, I probably watched 5 or 6 Cal games this year somehow. I don't know why, but I really like him. Cal does not have a good team, really, so he was forced to throw the ball a ton. This is going to sound like a stupid comparison just because of who he is, but the Aaron Rodgers thing, I kind of like it. He doesn't have as big of an arm as Rodgers, but he's very fluid moving around the pocket. He's really good throwing under pressure. When he gets out of the pocket, he's a really good thrower on the run. I think he's the best QB in the draft, and I think it's by a lot. I don't have any concern about his slight frame. To me, he looks just like Rodgers or Derek Carr or one of those guys.
What I like about Goff is the fact you hit on it. That Cal's O-line, he got beat up a little bit, and with that bad O-line, he was forced to make a lot of audibles and changes at the line. I don't know how much influence Wentz had on the offense at North Dakota State.
Yeah, I have no idea about that either. I think that's a really good point. I'm not sure pro teams even know how involved he was in calling plays at the line or anything like that. I'm a big Goff guy. I think he's going to be a really, really good player in the NFL. Now, if he goes to Cleveland, I don't think there's anybody that would be good right away. They need to build around him, find some pieces. But I think he's the better player if you're just asking for a comparison.
Can either of these guys or both start day one, week one in the NFL? Assuming they go 1-2.
I think Goff has that ability. Nowadays it's tougher than it used to be. Guys just got thrown in back in the day, but now the college playbooks are so different. The offenses are so dumbed down for those guys. I think it's much harder to start day one unless you're on a really, really good team.
Well, we touched upon two of the top prospects in the draft. Give me your top 10 on your big board.
Top 10 on a big board without needs or anything like that.
Correct.
I usually don't like putting the quarterbacks in there, but this is no order. I have Goff in my top 10. I think he's quarterback's a position of need, premium position. Got to have a quarterback to win, and I think he's good. I think he's got a chance to be a Pro Bowler. I think Miles Jack could be the best player in the draft. Recent days, I've heard he went for his medical recheck. Most of the teams gave him a total pass. There were a few team doctors that said he is quote-unquote a ticking time bomb, where the cartilage and bone are separating in his knee, and it's just a matter of time before it gives out. That's a little scary to hear. But if he can give you 8 years of being Patrick Willis, a faster version of Patrick Willis. I think you would sign up for that. He's the type of linebacker that every team needs in the NFL now. He can sideline to sideline and cover a tight end, cover a slot receiver. He's that versatile. I think he's going to be great in today's NFL. 3, Jalen Ramsey, Florida State. I'll go back to the word versatility. He can play corner. He can play safety. He reminds me a little bit of the Honey Badger, but doesn't have the ball skills. I think Honey Badger might have the best ball skills I've seen from a corner split safety in years. So I like him top 10. And this guy is getting no press right now, but Joey Bosa, I remember 6 months ago, was the best player in college football, and now all of a sudden he's not fast or big enough to play in the NFL. Give me him. I will plug him in on my defensive line any day, any week. I think he's just going to be a production machine. He might not blow people away with his speed or his athletic ability, but he's one of those Ryan Kerrigan guys where 10, 12 sacks a year, just put in the books, and you can plug him in at either side for the rest of his career. Next, this is going to be a little shocking, but if you're asking me for the top 10 players, I think Ezekiel Elliott, even though he's a running back, is a top 10 player in this draft. I think he comes in day one as a 3-down back. I think he is not as talented as Todd Gurley, but I think he's more polished and a better blocker right away than Todd Gurley was. And I think he can catch balls out of the backfield at a much higher rate than Gurley did. So wouldn't shock me to see Elliott maybe on a team that someone is a fan of in this podcast, and I think he would be successful right away. I could see him being Rookie of the Year if you want an early call on that. Let's see, who else in the top 10? Let's go defensive line with DeForest Buckner, your boy Chip. Recruited him. He said he was one of his best recruits he's ever seen. He looks like Calais Campbell to me. Huge presence on the defensive line. He probably won't generate the sack numbers people want to see, but he will be that guy that plugs the run and is that up-the-middle type of pressure that is almost a necessity now if you're playing against a good quarterback. What is that, 5, 6, something like that?
That is 6, yes.
Let's go offensive line. You got to go to offensive line. I actually have 2 guys here. One of them I think is a little underrated. I think Ronnie Staley is underrated. Tunzel's the other guy. Those 2 got to be in the top 10, but I don't think they're that far apart. I think Tunzel's probably got a little more upside, but I think if you're talking about right away, I kind of like Ronnie Staley just as the plug-in immediately in the NFL. Tunzel kind of looks like Trent Williams to me, just monster athletic, but might take a year or 2 to learn. You never know, but just something about him worries me a little bit, but I think he's still got to be in the top 10. Let's see.
2 more to round it out.
2 more. I like Vernon Hargraves, corner out of Florida. I think he's close to Jalen Ramsey. I think he's got better hands than Jalen Ramsey. And if we're talking about man-to-man, I kind of like Hargraves better as a pure corner. He doesn't have the versatility, but he's really got that explosive burst that you want from that corner. Especially today, you can't really get your hands on the receiver. So after that initial jam, I think you got to have that quick closing speed, and he has that more so than Ramsey does. Let's see.
Who rounds it out?
What's that?
I said, who rounds out your 10?
I was trying to fit a sleeper in here for the top 10, but I don't want to go too far off the board here. So let's go. I'm going to shock you here, but I think he's going to go higher draft day. I like Josh Doxson out of TCU, the wide receiver.
I agree. Completely agree.
I think he's better than Treadwell. I like Treadwell, but the speed worries me a little bit in the NFL. But I love Josh Doxson from TCU. He's got speed. He's got the body. 6'2". The TCU offense is a little bit worrisome, but I watched a couple of games. He's got great hands and he runs great routes. So I'm a big fan of his. Maybe somewhere in that 10 to 17 range, but I think he'll be a top 10 player when it's all said and done out of this draft.
Now that we have your big board, let's get your one and only mock draft.
This is the tough one right here.
The Rams, who they taking, Goff or Wentz?
Oh, boy. Went back and forth on this one because I could see both. But I think in the end, I think they take the best quarterback on the board, and I think that's Jared Goff.
I agree. I do think they take Goff as well. At 2.
It's hard to get through the weeds of the smoke and the media, but I think they like Goff. The Wentz thing, I think, is not as real.
At 2, do the Browns stay there and take Wentz, or do they trade down?
Yeah, I can see the trade down here, but Hugh Jackson being a quarterback guy, you got to believe they go Wentz. They got to have a quarterback. I don't think that's who they want. I think they want Goff, but I would assume they'd have to be blown away by someone trading up. I think it's a possibility, though, like you said. But in the end, I think Wentz goes here regardless.
Now with that trade happening, Rams moving up to 1, do the Chargers get Tunsil at 3 now?
I think this pick comes down to 2 players. I think it comes down to Tunsil and Buckner. And I actually think the Chargers go with the more impact player with Rivers getting older. I think they go DeForest Buckner here.
Interesting.
Little bit of a surprise, but their defense is not very good, especially losing Weddle in the back half. I think they gotta pair someone up with Ingram off the edge. I think they go Buckner.
Interesting selection at 4 with the Cowboys. They could go a couple different areas. Where do they go?
Correct. Yeah, this is I think this is the wild card pick here. I saw that they worked out Goff and Jerry Jones was enamored and his jaw was dropping and everything that Jerry does. But everything that I've read there, that he does not make decisions anymore, so which is probably a good thing. So I think they stay away from the quarterback until the later rounds or even next year. They could go many different ways here. I think it ultimately comes down to defense. I think they go Ramsey or Bosa, and to your chagrin, I think they pulled the trigger on Ramsey here.
Yeah, I'm afraid of the Cowboys getting Ramsey, but I'm more afraid of them going wild card off the board and getting Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I just there's the younger Jones and the rest of the football minds seem to have taken over there, and their last couple drafts have been really solid. I would assume that they don't value running back like Jerry Jones values running back. But I agree. If they got Zeke Elliott, that would be scary to me.
Yes.
Him and Dez, very scary.
Number 5, this is my front runner for the wagon team this year, the Jaguars.
Jags, they're going to be keeping an eye on this Dallas pick because I think they have similar needs, especially in the secondary. If Ramsey is there, I think they go Ramsey, but in this mock, he is gone. So I think they go Miles Jack, linebacker, UCLA. I think they're in love with this kid. I think a lot of teams love this kid, and I think it's one of those safer picks where you just plug him in day one, and he's one of your best players.
Would you consider Joey Bosa here?
I think they would consider Bosa, yeah. They definitely need some help on the line. They need to generate sacks. But I think Gus is more an athletic speed rush guy, and I don't know if Bosa is that guy.
Ravens at 6. I think they hold a lot of value to teams looking to trade up at 6, especially if one of those quarterbacks starts sliding.
Yeah, this is a big value spot too, since Tunsil's still on the board. In this mock, I could definitely see them trading back here. It would fit what their organization likes to do because they have, they only won. It's only 2 or 3 years removed from their Super Bowl. They have a ton of holes to fill. Tough to predict the trades though, so we'll stick to the Ravens picking here. And I think they just wait and see the best player on the board. And in this instance, it's for their team, it's Joey Bosa.
I agree. I think that's a great fit for Baltimore. Now a wild card team with the Niners. Who knows what they think or what they're gonna do?
You would know this pick far better than I. I have a hunch if they stay here, though, just looking at their roster, what they need so much. And you would have to assume Chip's on a 5-year deal. He's going to get a quarterback that he likes at some point, right?
I think next year, I don't think they'll be very good. So I think in 2017, he could be at the top of the board.
Yes, great point. I was thinking the same thing, so I think they go ahead and take a cornerstone on the line. Take your pick, Stanley or Tunzel. I'm not sure which Chip would like better here, but I guess you go best graded out tackle, which is probably Tunzel.
At 8, your non-biased thoughts.
Good question. I was just going to give this one to you and let you take the player that you wanted here.
All along, I've really wanted Ronnie Stanley. I thought you plug him in at guard this year with Peters still at left tackle. And then once Peters moves on, you move Lane Johnson to left tackle and Stanley slides into right tackle. And hopefully you have your bookends for the next 10 years. But Ezekiel Elliott is really intriguing to me the past week or so.
Yeah, I think that buzz is starting to get louder and louder for Zeke to your squad. And if I were you, I know running backs devalued, but I think he's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's either Stanley or Elliott for me. Stanley, obviously, the safer pick, but Elliott could have an immediate impact.
I think he's great. If I was an Eagles fan, I would not be worried about running back this early at all. I think he's just so good at all three areas. But I agree. I think it's Elliott, Stanley. I think there's a sleeper here. I'm not in love with your secondary. I could see them going Hargraves.
Agreed.
Maybe if it fell that way. But for the purposes of this, we'll go Zeke Elliott.
Is Zeke Elliott remind you of Jamal Charles at all?
I think immediately he's a little bit different. He's a much, much better pass protector. And he does not have the top-end speed that Charles did. Charles was a track star in college, so he doesn't have that elite speed. But I see the comparisons, especially out of the backfield.
Yeah, I was thinking that way with Peterson having Charles in Kansas City. There's been some rumors swirling of the Eagles trying to move Ryan Matthews. The two teams I've heard are San Fran and Dallas. What value does he have?
I know we talked about this a few times this past fall. I thought he was severely underplayed this past year. I thought he was way better than DeMarco Murray. Thought he looked good at times. His value's hurt because he can't stay healthy.
Correct.
He's never been able to stay healthy. I still think he carries some value. It would probably be a mid-round pick, though, at this point.
So who goes to the Eagles in your mock?
I'm going to go Zeke Elliott. I think they pull the trigger.
Moving along to Tampa Bay, who's really done a nice job building their roster the past couple years. And they're an intriguing spot. I think they go defense, but I'd like to hear your thoughts here.
Totally agree. I think they got to go defense. They spent some money on offense. They spent some picks recently on offense. I think they got to improve the back end of their defense. So I think the draft has fallen perfectly to them at this point. So I'm going to give them the Florida boy, Vernon Hargraves.
I completely agree. I think that's where he ends up as well.
I think it's just too logical of a fit.
Moving along in the NFC East, the Giants at 10.
I have to think that this is one of the easier picks in the draft. They have to either go D-line or O-line. D-line, I don't think there's any way that Buckner falls this far. Maybe they take the defensive tackle from Louisville, Rankins, but I think they stick to the offensive line. If you look at the last 5 years, their two problems they've had are the secondary and their offensive line consistently is beat up by injuries. They can't protect Eli. So I think Ronnie Stanley here, perfect fit.
You buying into any of the talk of Stanley falling into the teens?
He could. I mean, there's a scenario here, because there's always 2 or 3 surprising picks, I think.
I guess I misphrased the question. Any you buy in at all to Conklin jumping Stanley on the tackle board?
I don't. I think Conklin is a much stiffer, less athletic, less versatile version of Stanley. I guess I don't know anything about their test scores or anything like that, but I would be surprised if someone took Conklin higher than Stanley.
Yeah, I agree as well.
If Conklin blew somebody away in an interview about their specific offense or something like that, maybe, but that would be the only way I could see that happening.
You would think the Chicago Bears at 11 are going defense.
Yeah, I think they're going to keep building. Logically, it would be their D-line. If one of the corners slips, maybe a corner, but I think they got to get some D-line, some pass rushers maybe. I could see them either going Rankins. Now, here's a caveat. If Stanley somehow fell this far, Bears would be a good fit for him as well. But I see them going D-tackle with Rankins out of Louisville.
Any consideration for Leonard Floyd from Georgia?
Yeah, outside linebacker. I think that would be a great fit as well. Give them some speed. I think that would make sense, especially given Fox's history of drafting edge rushers.
The Saints at 12. I would be shocked if they didn't go defense.
Yeah, I think they would look at Rankins from Louisville as well. We're going to stay D-tackle here, though, and stay kind of close to home, and we're going to go Mississippi State's Chris Jones. Probably the most outside of any defensive lineman, but kind of underachieved at Mississippi State. Needs to work on technique, but he's got all the physical tools to be really, really good.
Wow, that's one name I have not seen in many mocks.
He's a good player. I think he's going to sneak up there.
The Dolphins at 13. Where do they go?
Man, this is one that I really I had no idea. They have needs everywhere. They kind of filled a couple of them, but they just can't seem to find an identity on either side of the ball. I think they're going to go defense, if I had to guess. I'm going to give them Mackenzie Alexander from Clemson. Really good corner. He's undersized, though, but I think you stick him on one side of the field, and he should be pretty good in the pros. He's got great ball skills, great instincts. He's just a little bit undersized.
To our ex-wagon team, the Raiders at 14.
This is the one where I wanted one of the corners to fall to. I think if Alexander is there, he's a really good fit. It's a really good possibility that it does fall that far. I could see them taking Conklin here. Give some help to Derek Carr. I think it's one of those two positions. It's either corner or offensive line. But I'm going to go offensive line. I think young quarterback, young running backs, you got to get the running game going. They struggled to run it last year, so I'm going Conklin.
That would put the Titans in the scenario we talked about earlier. Assuming they do stay at 15, though, where will they go now with the 3 tackles off the board?
Yeah, they want Conklin, obviously. The next tackle on the board would be Taylor Decker from Ohio State. Pretty high for him, I think. So the scenario would play out. They either take him or trade back, and since we're not doing trades, I gotta go with another tackle with Taylor Decker. I could see a scenario where they try to get Mariota weapons. This would be a good place for the Treadwell, Josh Dobson, Corey Coleman's of the world, but I think you could trade back and get them 5 picks later.
The Detroit Lions at 16. They seem to have a lot more holes to fill.
They're going to go new ownership here. If you can draft a new owner, that's where they would go. But they cannot, so I'm going to go defense here. They spent some money on offense after Calvin retired, so I'm going to go with your boy that you mentioned, Leonard Floyd, edge rusher from Georgia.
To 17 in the Atlanta Falcons, who seem to be building something under Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I kind of like where they're headed here. They let go of some older guys, Roddy White in particular. Their defense played okay at times last year, surprisingly. If you look on the offensive end, they're struggling in the complementary department to Julio Jones, especially with White departing. They don't really have another option, even at tight end. So I think they go wide receiver here. It'll be interesting to see which wide receiver they like. I think, though, they'll stick with the board and go Treadwell. Wouldn't be shocked to see Josh Doctson, our boy, go right here, though.
Could you see any scenario where Will Fuller goes here?
I think Will Fuller could slip to the mid-second round.
Okay.
I like Will Fuller, though. I like what I saw. I think he is pretty unpolished, though. I wouldn't be shocked to see him mid to late second round.
Yeah, just in thinking Julio's the big physical guy, I thought Will Fuller could be a nice compliment, but 17 may be high for him.
Yeah, Julio physical, but he's got a ton of speed. I do like the idea of having Treadwell and Julio opposite each other, both big targets for Matt Ryan.
Tundra Dane's Indianapolis Colts at 18.
Oh man, they have a lot of needs as well. They don't really have many good players, so it's not shocking that they struggled this past year without luck. I think they need to get better in one specific area, and I feel like we've been saying this for 12, 15 years now, 20 years. Defense. And I think there's a good fit on the board here. Shaq Lawson, defensive end from Clemson. I think he can play day one, give them some pass rushing, and he's really good against the run. So I think this is a really sensible pick for the Colts.
You would think Rex Ryan at 19 will look on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I did read that there are some rumors that maybe they trade up for Paxton Lynch or take Paxton Lynch here, but I think I saw enough from Tyrod to make him your starter for another year or two. So I agree with you. I think they go on the defensive side of the ball, and I think there's another good fit here, especially going back to his days in Baltimore. I could see them going Jaron Reed, defensive tackle out of Alabama, or Reggie Ragland, the middle linebacker from Alabama. So I'm going to go Reggie Ragland here. I think he's a really good linebacker. I think Rex likes those big inside Mike linebackers, and he fits that bill.
Any thoughts to A'Shawn Robinson here, the D tackle from Alabama, to try and establish with what he had with Mo Wilkerson?
A'Shawn's a little bit overrated for me. I prefer the other kid from Alabama, Reed, the other D tackle. I could see him going with that position, though. It seems like he likes to work middle of the defense out, so definitely see that possible.
Interesting selection at 20. What do the Jets do?
Oh, man. Do the Jets want a quarterback? They took Petty 2 years ago, or last year, whatever that was. Seems like they aren't really sure what they have with him.
Fitzpatrick still remains unsigned, correct?
Unsigned, and looks to be headed nowhere. So the quarterback thing here is weird to me. Could throw a whole wrench into their draft day plans, I would think. I don't know if they're just going to roll with Geno or what, but they cut Cromartie. I think that leaves a hole on the outside. They are in desperate need of some younger weapons. Marshall and Decker are really good, but they're getting up there. Marshall, I think, is 33 this year. So this is another spot where I could see Corey Coleman or Josh Doxson going. Ultimately, I think they, based on defensive head coach and quarterback situation in the air, I think they go corner. And I like Eli Apple from Ohio State. I think he's pretty underrated. I really like him. There's been some concerns around him, but that'll make him fall maybe past the 18, 19, 20 mark, but I think someone will take a shot at him after 20.
I do. I like Apple as well. I think he's undervalued.
Yeah, I really like his ball skills.
To 21 and the Hearts.
I could see a trade here, trade back. They have a lot of needs, but their GM likes to wheel and deal. I think they go defense, though. They really need to rebuild some of the aging parts of that defense. If Jaron Reed from Bama is on the board here, I think they go him. Sneaky pick, I talked to you about this the other day. Carl Joseph, safety from West Virginia. He missed most of the year with a knee injury, but he can play. He's a real physical kid. I would not be shocked to see them pull the trigger on him. They have needed a safety ever since the days of Sean Taylor. I like him a lot. That's kind of my sleeper pick right here is Carl Joseph, safety out of West Virginia.
To the team that made us a lot of money, the Houston Texans.
This is one, I think this is an easy one. I think they go wide receiver, depending on how the board falls, but got to get a complimentary target to D-Hop. He felt like he was triple teamed all year and still put up the numbers. Just imagine what it would do if they could get some pressure off of him. I like Doxson the best out of all of them. I'm not sure, what O'Brien's philosophy is. I could see him maybe going Sterling Shepard, being more polished across from Hopkins, but I'm going to go Josh Doxson here.
Yeah, Doxson seems to make a lot of sense the way that he's built a possession receiver with some speed to complement DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really scary offense if they can get some quarterback play from Brock.
23, the Minnesota Vikings.
This is another one where I think they're in a similar spot to Houston. Young quarterback, Stephon Diggs kind of played well for some of the spots for them last year. He has some speed, but he's a little undersized. I think they stick offense here. Their defense was pretty good last year. They have a nice young secondary. If there's a pass rusher available that somehow falls, like Shaq Lawson, maybe they go that route. But I'll stick wide receiver. They got to get some more weapons. I'm going to go Corey Coleman out of Baylor.
It would appear that the Bengals need a wide receiver. Do they take one at 24?
Yeah, you would think that they would if somehow somebody fell. I'm not sure if anyone's going to fall this far. You'll have guys like Shepard and Michael Thomas, kid from Ohio State, but man, I don't think they'll have much more than that, and I feel like that's a little early. So I think you might see them go defense here, and the AFC North is a hard-hitting division. I think they go defense. That kid Calhoun from Michigan State, I think is a good fit. The big nose tackle from Baylor, Andrew Billings, is a good fit. So I'm going to go Marvin Lewis style, and I'm going to say Andrew Billings, defensive tackle, Baylor.
I was going to say that seems like a perfect fit at 25 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where do they go?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they could use someone like that. They really, really, really need secondary help. If there's a corner that falls, Mackenzie Alexander, I took off the board a lot earlier. Eli Apple here would make a ton of sense, I think.
What about
the problem is I don't know. Carl Joseph is off the board. I took him with my heart. If Carl Joseph's here, I think they take Carl Joseph, but in this scenario, he's not. Next on my board, who I think is actually a pretty big sleeper. I watched him 2 times this year because he was on a good team. Willie Jackson III from Houston could be the sneaky guy of the draft. And he seems like a Pittsburgh Steelers type of guy where really good player in college, gets overlooked because he wasn't at a huge school. They plug him in, and he's really good.
That's exactly who I was going to say to you. What about William Jackson? I agree. The Pittsburgh should go secondary here.
Yep.
Uh,
I think they have to go secondary.
Seahawks at 26.
We're down to the point where teams are not picking for need necessarily, just picking best on the board. I think one of the ones that fits, that could be a sneaky play for Sneaky Pete, is Robert Kemdiche. I think he would bring a lot of upside and a lot of athleticism to that D-line. That would not shock me, nor would Calhoun from Michigan State. I could see them also maybe going secondary for some depth. They've had trouble finding a corner opposite of Sherman. I think Jackson would make a ton of sense if he was still there, but since we just took him, I'm going to go Calhoun, Michigan State.
The Green Bay Packers at 27.
The Packers. You'd want an offensive lineman, and it's tough to find them at this point in the draft because you're either reaching or you're hoping for a guy to fall. But I don't see anybody that they would love here. You've already mentioned a guy that I think fills a hole and looks kind of like the guy that retired, PJ Raji. I think Ashawn Robinson here makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, you would think him, if Billings is around or if Reed's around, they would make sense for the Packers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good fit.
To the Andy Reeds at 28.
Oh, boy. I feel like I should let you take this one since you know the guy. Is this a possibility for Paxton Lynch?
I think so.
Yeah, I had his name. I have a couple other guys listed here, but at this point, with who we've already taken, I think Andy pulls the trigger.
Yeah, I don't think they have a glaring need. Maybe a wide receiver here to complement Macklin. But I think their roster is pretty solid across the board, and I think it's time that they start grooming somebody for Alex Smith to take over.
I think Lynch actually, besides Goff, who I think Andy would love, I think Lynch is a pretty good fit for him. He's raw, but he's got probably the best arm skills of anyone in the draft. And I think he's the guy that's going to sit for 2 years anyway. So I think this is probably the best quarterback fit for Andy.
Yeah, I think Lynch goes here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
It would seem the Arizona Cardinals at 29 are in position to take the best player available. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is almost an impossible one because they could literally just pick anyone on the board. They don't really have a need. If Chris Jones, D-tackle from Mississippi, was there, maybe. I think if any of the D-tackles are still available, they'll jump on that. In this scenario, the D-end, outside linebacker, Emmanuel Ogba, I think is probably one of the guys on their board. I can see Jonathan Bullard from Florida on the board, as I just mentioned, and DJ still on the board. But Bruce Arians doesn't seem like the type to take a risk on a guy like Robert, so I'm going to give them the outside linebacker, D-end, pass rushing specialist, Emmanuel Ogba from Oklahoma State.
Super Bowl runner-ups, Carolina Panthers at 30.
This one, I have not heard anything about the injury rehab from their former first-round pick, Florida State wide receiver, but this would be a sneaky wide receiver play here, I think. If any of them happen to fall. You already mentioned Will Fuller. I think he would be a fairly good fit as well here if maybe they wanted to reach a little bit. If not, I would assume they just keep building their defense. It's already unbelievable that you can never have enough depth on the D-line. Jonathan Bullard makes a lot of sense here. He's pretty versatile. They like to rotate guys in and out. Defensive-minded head coach, so I'll go with Bullard here. But if the wide receiver slips, I can see them taking a shot at receiver.
And 31 Super Bowl champs, Denver Broncos.
This is the spot where I think you finally see Kendichi off the board. He's probably a top 10 talent, but all the off-the-field issues are obviously concerning, especially with suspensions being handed out left and right by the commish. It just kind of seems like a natural fit where they get the best player by far on the board. Might have some questions, but they're getting a ton of value here.
RIP 32nd pick. The Patriots have been stripped
the Pats
of it.
are going to take. They should be getting this pick. This is ridiculous that it got stripped, but the Pats would take Kendichi as well, probably.
One name that wasn't mentioned that I've seen mid to late first round, Darren Lee, the linebacker from Ohio State. You think he falls to the second?
He's one of those guys where it's going to be the one or two teams that fall in love with him. Tons of physical skill, but I don't know. He never stood out to me. Never seemed to be in the right spot. Just kind of a product of a good team. I wouldn't be shocked if he fell the second round, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he was picked somewhere between 15 and 30.
The other name that seems to be falling mostly because of character issues, Noah Spence.
Yeah, I highly, highly doubt you'll see him in the first round. I think he's a second or third round flyer pick because of those issues.
Where do you think Jalen Smith from Notre Dame goes?
Very, very tough. If my doctor said, he'll sit out next year, but he'll be 95 to 100%, starting 2017, I like him late second round, early third round. Some teams have taken him totally off the board because some doctors think that his nerve damage is so extensive that they'll never regenerate to where they were, which I guess takes away your explosion. But I think if you're talking late second, especially if you have multiple picks in that area, I don't see why you wouldn't take a lottery ticket.
How about give me some guys flying under the radar in the second or later rounds that you like?
Well, we gave you the first rounder that I really like that's flying under the radar in Dotson. I just think he's going to be the best wide receiver in the class. Let's see here. Where's my other sheet? Some sleepers. Carl Joseph, I gave you the first round, but I think there's a chance he slips to the second round, but I think he's really, really good. Another wide receiver I like is the kid from Arizona State, Devin Lucien. He was just productive as all crap, but doesn't seem to be getting anything. Really good hands. He's one of those guys that you throw the ball to and he somehow catches everything. Love him on a team that has some wide receiver depth that can afford to take a guy that works underneath. And it seems like in the NFL now, the underneath routes are where the bread and butter is. Offensive line, he probably won't get picked round one either, but the kid from NC State, Joe Funny, guards aren't popular. I think he's probably going to be playing guard in the league. Some have him as a tackle, but I think he'll play guard, and I think he'll be a really, really good guard. Really strong interior run blocker. Don't think you can have enough of that in the NFL, especially with D-lines going towards the interior pass rush. Let's move outside the corner. Kalen Reed, Southern Miss. Small school. He's only 5'11". But man, he can really cover guys, and he's one of those guys. If the ball's in his area, watch out because he's not going to drop it for the most part. I think he was in the top 20 at Pro Football Focus coverage corners in his cover grade ranking. So I know his competition level wasn't great, but I think he could be a nice fit for somebody as a third corner right away. Sticking with corners, this time we're going to a big school. Devontae Harris, Texas A&M. Another guy that is going to get knocked down because he's not 6 feet tall. He's close. He's 5'11", but he can really jump. and he's a really technically sound corner. I love the combination of the athletic small corners that play technique. I think that's where you need to move to with all the one-on-one coverage that you see now. Guys are going to spread you out. So I think he can cover a lot of those inside guy routes, which are just impossible to find corners to cover these days.
Where do you think, or what round do you think the Heisman Trophy winner Derrick Henry goes?
Oh, good one. I would guess late second, early third. Wouldn't shock me though if he fell late third, early fourth.
Is he the next running back off the board after Ezekiel Elliott?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think yes. Just because of what he did at the combine, I think he probably solidified that number 2. You never know, though. The Alabama running back is a scary thing. It's kind of like the USC quarterback, so I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't.
I know we didn't factor the trades into the mock, but do you think we'll see an active draft days?
Yes. Yes, I think you'll see a few more trades. I know that we already saw 2 of them already. I think that's a foreshadowing of what's to come. I think you'll see a lot of movement this year, which is always great for the viewer.
Anything else on the NFL draft that we may have missed?
We didn't talk about one position specifically, tight end. There's not a ton of tight ends. Kid from Arkansas, Hunter Henry, he'll be a very, very good pass-catching tight end, but he can't block, so he might be your next, without the off-the-field stuff, Aaron Hernandez type guy. That's a mashup problem. So I guess you could put him in the category of sleeper, even though he's clearly the best tight end.
And then when you get back from Europe, we'll recap the draft. But to the moment that everybody's been waiting for, the opening odds for the Saxton. Give them to us.
Yes, this is an important moment because of the flood of cash that's going to come in the next 2 minutes.
Who opens as the favorite?
The opening odds. I need my fellow bookmaker to help me here. I have a conflict of interest, and I'm pretty sure the SEC looks down upon that. So I need to hear the opening odds from you.
I have the team of Davy Trump, Rusty, and the Molinari brothers at minus 145. And
that's a huge favorite.
The opposing side at plus 130.
Wow. What? Can I hear some reasoning behind that?
A lot of confidence coming in from Rusty. The team of Molinaris are almost guaranteed a point. But Coach Miller could have something up his sleeve with some strategy and slow playing.
I think there's a couple of wild cards for the 2016 version. Ed, the mechanic, Barna, flies under the radar. The last time that I saw him tee it up, the word is that he played very well. If he can provide that spark as the anchor, I think those odds are a little bit high for our side here.
I think there's a lot of overreaction to Davy Trump's struggles in Florida.
I think that could be a north side strategy. Is we're trying to get as much negative talk going as possible. Let you guys settle in and think that no one's hitting the ball well. Show up, and then no one on the north is going to miss a sweet spot all week, I don't think.
This is just opening odds. You can check them out in Europe in the sports books over there on almost any corner.
I think you'll see some movement on the odds, given that one of the North players, one of the Molinari brothers, is not going to be touching a club for 11 days. It's got to shift some of the odds.
Well, then you give me your opening report.
If I was giving you an opening report right now, I think the minus 115 is fair. Plus 105 for your side.
We'll split the difference then. It opens at minus 130 and plus 117.
We'll have to see where the action comes in and move the line.
So there it is. Opening odds minus 130 and plus 117.
Officially open for business.
Enjoy your trip to Europe. Great job by you today on this Monday. And we'll talk to you in about 10 days.
Will do, buddy. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks here. We'll get another pod going.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.
See you, bud.